people live. Now you see, we're living in a world very much like the first century Israel. We live in a culture filled with people who talk constantly about truth and justice and mercy. And they speak of compassion and tolerance and kindness and caring for the helpless. And yet, there's never been a time when there's been less compassion, tolerance, or kindness, at least it seems like, than in our day. And the church has been affected by this spirit. We have become like the Pharisees. We love the idea of love and mercy and kindness and compassion and justice, but our love is restricted to the idea, the abstract idea, and not in actually doing these things. We're devoted to abstractions and not to actually showing these mercies to others. So we love the idea of justice. Everybody does. But we don't mind injustice if the injustice causes our enemies to suffer. We kind of go, good, there you go. Good for you. You got it. And we're glad you got it. We love the idea of seeking forgiveness and giving forgiveness, but then we refuse to seek it or grant it when we have sinned against others or have been offended and sinned against by others. We denounce vengeance and praise meekness, but as soon as we suffer wrong, we want vengeance and don't want any mercy at all. We forget about meekness. We love the idea of compassion, but then can't bring ourselves to exercise it if it's towards someone who opposes us and stands in need of our compassion because we don't think they deserve it. We love to speak about tolerance and view ourselves as tolerant and open-minded, and yet when you're actually confronted with a person who disagrees with you, you refuse to grant any tolerance whatsoever. We're generous and kind to those who agree with us and are like us, but vicious and cruel to those who disagree. We're appalled by bigotry and yet resort to that very same bigotry to discredit those who refuse to side with us. It's a common thing. You may remember, if you've read Dostoevsky's novel, The Brothers Karamazov, one of the characters in there is this priest, Father Zosima, and he's talking to this lady, and she's concerned about her lack of love. And then he confesses how easy it is to be devoted to the idea of love in the abstract and yet not love anybody in particular. Listen to what he says. He says, I'm amazed at myself. The more I love mankind in general, the less I love people in particular. In 24 hours, I can begin to hate even the best of men. One, because he takes too long eating his dinner. Another, because he has a cold and keeps blowing his nose. I become the enemy of people the moment they touch me, he said. On the other hand, it has always happened that the more I hate people individually, the more ardent becomes my love for humanity as a whole. You might remember Linus in Peanuts. I think he's responding to an accusation from Lucy. And he says, I love humanity. It's people I can't stand. And that's the way it is. That's the way we are. Right? But that's Pharisaism in a phrase, isn't it? That's it. That is exactly the way Israel was. Not only Israel, us too, but Jesus is attacking this very thing. We live in a society that follows the sin of the unbelieving Jews of Jesus' day. We only love those who love us. We are kind to those who are kind to us. We are merciful and patient and forgiving to those with whom we agree and support us and flatter us. But we can't stand those who are not like us and who disagree with us and offend us. We are neighbors to those who are likable and agreeable. But we refuse to be neighbors to those who offend our sensibilities and preferences in some way or another. And Jesus says, this is what is cutting you out of the kingdom. You want to be in the kingdom? You want to have that eternal life? That life of the kingdom, the eternal kingdom? Then you need to live it by the grace of God